is a good cause, you know. And later on, even more astounding, Prabhupada wanted to buy the place, and I went there and negotiated. And she said, I was just thinking the same thing. I said, what's the price? $3 million. And in the preaching of 3 hours, she cut down the price from $3 million to $1 million, which is, and there's no logic in it. You know, it is Krishna's logic. And so there are so many places like this that by the mercy of Prabhupada, by the mercy of this great soul, in the most astounding things are possible. It's not by human. Prabhupada came as an old man. One lord of the House of Lords in London stopped, what was his name, Ranchor Prabhu, and said, I had to buy this book, The Life of Prabhupada. He said, I had to buy it because I heard that here's a man with 70 years, he goes to America, 66, at the time when we are all on a cane, just like myself, I'm on the cane, you know. This body is not the same. You know, when I was young, I was dancing in kirtan, leading kirtans and all these things. And now to go to America to start a Hare Krishna movement, this is utopic. This is completely utopic. So Prabhupada went, he said, I'm astounded when I heard that. So I read his book and I can understand this man is an extraordinary person. He said, nobody can do such a thing in the material world. At that age, to establish a worldwide movement. It's now, alone in India, 400 temples. Yeah, it's not the devotees, this is the power of Srila Prabhupada that brings all this about. You know, the Shakti, Krishna, Shakti, Vinana. There's this verse that unless one is empowered by Krishna, one cannot preach like that, so effective. It's not possible. And wherever Prabhupada would go, he would change people's heart, wherever, whether in France, whether in England. Why we were so successful in Britain? Because Prabhupada sent 6 of his followers. You know, and even yesterday, you know, I saw somebody sent me a picture. You know, let me show you. Here. This has happened just a couple of days before. It's the devotees where they're having kirtan in London, Hainam, and George Harrison, no, Paul McCartney stopped by. Picture is gone. He stopped by, pulled down the window, and talked with them. He's one of the Beatles, you know. $1,250,000,000 he has in his bank account. That's a lot of money, you know. He pulled down the window for the devotees and said, hello. They immediately understand this. And he said, they sold him a book immediately, and he took it. And then, can we make a photo? He said, sure. And so here are these 3 Sankirtan boys, right? And one of the most famous people in the world, stopping by and allow them to make a photo and waving. This is all Prabhupada's mercy. This is not possible otherwise, you know. Nobody can stop. Oh, here's a big picture. How did I do that? There you have a big picture. I can send you this picture. It's quite amazing. And so this is all the power of a great personality who has his golden touch. Because he is under Krishna's control. He's under Krishna's control. He is a tool in Krishna's hands. He is a tool. Like we have to become tools. We should not try to practice Krishna consciousness in our own way. We should simply pray to become tools of Prabhupada and ultimately tools of Bhaktisiddhanta, tools of Bhaktivinoda Thakur all the way to the Acharyas. That is the way to being able to do something, and also the way to happiness. Because if the more we come into Krishna's realm, which is full of bliss, the more bliss is there. So that much as for this verse. Krishna is omnipresent, that means he's everywhere. He's not in the sky only, like religionists in Western countries think, that God is in heaven. He's everywhere, and he's omnipresent, he's omniscient. That means he knows everything. He knows omniscience. Omniscience means he knows everything. The word om is in there. Omniscient, omnipotent, all-powerful and all-powerful. Omnipresent, everywhere. Omnipotent, all-powerful, and omniscient, that he knows everything. Nothing can be hidden from Krishna. Nothing. He sees everything. And so by following the instructions of Krishna, and by following the saints and sages, great personalities, Parampara, Guru, Shastra, Sadhu, we get in contact with Krishna, and then we can do amazing things. Amazing things. Like I can only speak about my generation. So many devotees have done amazing things that are not possible otherwise. They went to London, and within weeks they learned to know the Beatles. And in fact, this famous personality, this Paul McCartney, he bought a house right beside our temple in London, downtown, around the corner, 100 yards. And as an effect of it, he passes by the devotees all the time, every day, or whenever he goes into his office there. He has his headquarters there. And many times the restaurant gets an order, Paul McCartney wants to have a meal for so many people. And they eat prasada. You see, I mean, this is all Krishna's mercy, that we were able to secure that place in huge London, and he was able to secure a place right around the corner. And there's a connection there, as you can see here. This is all Krishna's mercy. This is the power of Srila Prabhupada, the power of great souls, that the whole atmosphere becomes charged by the presence of the Lord's unalloyed devotees. And in this way, things are getting done. In this way, things are getting done. In this way, Arjuna was able to conquer thousands and thousands of people, by the grace of Krishna. And this way, Bhaktisiddhanta was able to meet all kinds of hugely important people. Bhaktivinoda Thakur became the custodian, the number one custodian of Jagannath Temple in Orissa, and he was the highest officer of the British government in all of India. The British didn't trust any Indian to be in high position, and he had the highest position of a magistrate for whole Odisha, government, and his power was amazing. This leads us now to a discussion on Bhaktivinoda Thakur, if we have that time. We have that time. We must take the time. Today is a special day. This is all possible by the mercy of Krishna and by the mercy of his pure representatives, such as Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who we are going to remember today, all the way to Srila Prabhupada. So we are very fortunate, those devoted in the first generation of Srila Prabhupada, fortunate, and those in the second, and any generation follow, as long as they follow Srila Prabhupada's teachings and hold holy what he said. Practically speaking, these books are, in one sense, they're Srila Prabhupada's Vani. This is Srila Prabhupada Vani. In the absence of the spiritual master, the service is called Vani. So they are Prabhupada's Vani, but they are also at the same time Vapu. Because as we have heard from Chandramani Maharaj, I gave this example yesterday, I wrote a letter to Garuda Prabhu, who is a professor at Harvard University, top university in the world. And he inherited the whole library, he told me, of this one of the famous professors who trusted him and who reared him in this position. And he pointed out how this printing of Srila Prabhupada, they're holy scriptures. And as such, they are untouchable. You can't touch them. You have to just read them very carefully and preserve them. And Chandramani's example shows that they're not just Vani, they're also Vapu, that Prabhupada can appear through this. One time Prabhupada said, even if you read only one page of one of my books, then he said, even if somebody reads just one sentence of my books, he said, then even if somebody reads only one word of my writing, his life is deeply touched, because the energy of electricity is everywhere. It's in a light bulb, it's in a washing machine, it's in the fridge, it's in the electricity that drives a huge machine. It's the same energy. So just by touching Prabhupada's words in these books, even just by touching a book like this, I found the best way to distribute is that people touch this book. Like, I give you an example here. Can you give me this? Give me a cell phone. I give you an example how I distributed lots of books. You go over the street and just hold a little leaflet. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a sheet of toilet paper. I did it as well when we had nothing in print. Everybody will take a little leaf, right? Everybody. Get up. You know the person. I give you a little demonstration and watch carefully. So here's a guy that takes a leaf and says, hello, good to meet you. I have a present for you. So he has a book in his hand already. And you see how I tricked him to get this book into his hand, because he touches the book. He is in contact with Krishna at that very moment. It begins. It's the beginning of his spiritual life. Very simple, if you go around with these books and try to distribute them, it's very hard for people to take them. But if you have a little leaflet, somebody takes it and immediately says, it's for you. And we're distributing today these books to all the intelligent people in town, such as your good self, for example. Or I would say, did you see this famous personality just pass by? He said, no. He said, really, what happened? I said, we're distributing today these books to all the intelligent people. It's not related, but just to get him to take this book and have it in his hand. So there is some magic involved when we distribute books, and there's some magic involved when we see how Prabhupada was able to do all this. There's some magic involved, which is described here, that great souls like Vidura, they have no desire then in life save and except to serve Krishna. And that's yesterday I wrote, Prabhupada said, we are not interested in any kind of public worship. If people think being worshipped or recognition, what is the use? If 1,000 asses say you're very good, what is the benefit of that? We want to have a certificate from Krishna that we have satisfied him in our preaching, in our deeds, in our action. And this is the underlying, modus of life, the way how people live. And they're pure devotees of God. They have no desire except to serve Krishna and make Krishna happy. Make Krishna happy. Just like one time Haridas met Lord Chaitanya, And he said, asked Lord Chaitanya if there's anything he can do for him. And Lord Chaitanya said, yes, I'm not very happy because people in this age are so fallen. How they can actually take to Krishna consciousness. And then Haridas Thakur said, my dear Lord, you know everything, but since you asked me, just by touching the holy name, once even, people have a spiritual life again. It may take time. It may take time. How many people we have given prasadam? It's inconceivable. How many people? And books, inconceivable. It takes some time. When they come back next life, you'll have a huge amount of people who are interested in Krishna consciousness because they ate prasadam in their last life, because they took a book in their last life, because they gave a donation in their last life. Gigantic, gigantic congregation. This is just the first stage, you know. You raise an enormous amount of people who are interested. They see the book, they want it. Or they are born and start chanting. Like we had this boy in Czech Republic, I was told, who's 8 years old and chants every day 64 rounds. How is that possible? 64 rounds. 8-year-old boy born in a Karmi family in Czech Republic. How is that possible? This is Prabhupada's power. You know, that he certainly touched the book in his last life or did something. Did something. You know, this is just, I'll tell you another story. I have to tell you that story. It's just too good. There was a girl on Hainam, Indian girl, and she was attracted by the kirtan led by Tribhuvanat. And I have to be close to the microphone. And so then she realized that she knew him from a long time before. And then I don't anymore the details, but it's well reported. It came out that in her last life, she met Srila Prabhupada in the Bhaktivedanta manor as a Sankirtan boy. And Tribhuvanat was a Sankirtan leader. He was a Sankirtan leader. And then this boy came all the way from Edinburgh down to become initiated by Srila Prabhupada. And I don't know whether he became initiated or not, but on the way back, he had a car accident and he died in a car accident and was born in a Hindu family in London. And that girl then became attracted to Tribhuvanat. They said, I know him, you know, and there's precisely described how everything fell into place. He remembered this boy. You know, we all remember him actually, because that was one of the first person who died in Krishna consciousness, who then was born in the form of a girl who became interested in Krishna consciousness and became a devotee. So Krishna's plans are inconceivable. And we are part of this plan. We are very fortunate. And in this life, we will do something. And if we are born in this material world again, we do something more. Because the stage is set for spreading Krishna consciousness. Now I want to turn to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Sorry that I got carried away a little bit, but it is setting the stage. So while you had this wonderful kirtan today, I sat on my computer to find something about the life of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And so here it is. So he was born in 1838. He left the world in 1914, the beginning of the First World War, beginning of the First World War. And it's stated here in this report, he was a pioneering spiritual leader, somebody who pioneered a whole movement, a householder, what you can do as a householder, not that you just sit and feed your babies, which is also necessary. At the same time, he had a lot of babies. He had 10 children. That's a lot of babies to feed. At the same time, he was a magistrate in the highest position under the British rule, a prolific preacher, writer, and poem. He wrote volumes of books reintroducing the pure teachings of Lord Chaitanya at a time when these teachings had become lost. So the situation was that after Lord Chaitanya disappeared, gradually, the influence of his movement waned, became dim, less and less. And one might wonder, why is this so? But it is so because, you see, it has to get worse before things get better again. My father always used to say, when it's getting worse, it's the beginning of things are getting good. And when it's getting really good, be careful, because that may be the beginning of it turns worse again, because this is how things work in the material world. So there had to be 2 centuries, the influence of the movement waned. Sects of pseudo devotees, such as Sahajiyas and similar groups, had become prominent. And professing love of God but acting in base, immoral ways. These groups brought disrepute upon the pure movement begun by Lord Chaitanya. Then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared. And he was born in rather opulent circumstances in Biranagara, or Bengali devotees would know where that is, and advanced himself all the way to the position of the magistrate of the British government in Orissa. And there he did some amazing things. He was writing all the time. He wrote his book, The Precepts of Lord Chaitanya, which was sent to McGill University in the year Srila Prabhupada was born. Prabhupada took this as a very important point, that when he was born, the book of Bhaktivinoda Thakur was put into the library of McGill University in Canada. Prabhupada took this as very significant, So there was a mystic, Vishakhesena, in Orissa, who was very prominent and acquired some mystic powers. He could produce fire from his head, which is quite a feat. He had this mystic power. And he had declared, he became very prominent in Orissa and declared that he would drive off the British from ruling Orissa, and he will become the king of Orissa. So people, they follow this. Somebody is loud enough, barks loud enough, like this previous president of the United States, Mr. Whatever. He barks loud enough, he has many foolish followers. Prabhupada told us when many small asses won't want to be the leader, that means he must be the biggest ass. Prabhupada said that. That's the logic. He must be the biggest ass. Otherwise, many small asses would vote somebody. And so he became the king. And he published his statements, and the British thought he should be eliminated because he is undermining British rule. But they passed a sentence that he should be arrested. The district governor of Bengal drew up the arrest order. Nobody there, no policeman dared to issue this order, to actually do this, to arrest him. They were afraid. Sometimes police is afraid. Just like when this Babri mosque was destroyed in Ayodhya, right? I was sitting on a television set in the home of an Indian life member in Delhi, and we were spellbound. I mean, I enjoyed every stone that fell from the roof of the mosque, I must say. And so did he. He enjoyed like anything, seeing that. And I prayed to Krishna that I would see them. I better not say that. There are some other places which I would like to see being turned into temples again. So then, because it was done by a certain group of people, the RSS, right? An arrest was issued to arrest the representatives of the RSS in Vrindavan, who is actually in charge for the whole RSS in Mathura district, while at the same time he is a priest in the temple of Radharaman, one of the prominent priests. So he has this double role. On one side he's a priest, on the other side he's this officer. And so they issued an order to him. They called him and said, Maharaj, we come to arrest you in 2 hours. Please do not be home. Don't be home. We come to arrest you. And so in the same way, an order was passed that he should be arrested, but no policeman wanted to do this. They were afraid of his power. And so then the commissioner for Orissa, Mr. Ravan Shaw, asked Bhaktivinoda Thakur to bring this Bishaki Sena to justice. So what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did, and it shows you how he was unafraid, like Prabhupada, unafraid, He went and saw this Bishaki Sena personally. And the yogi showed some powers that would normally scare off any ordinary man. Any ordinary man would run away, because seeing this man is so powerful. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur was not impressed, and told him, I can see you have some yogic power in Tantra, but why don't you come to Puri? Because in Puri you could receive the blessing of Lord Jagannath, the famous deity of Krishna. So this fellow replied, why should I come to see Jagannath? He's only a piece of wood. I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He said that, I'm the Supreme Personality. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur became furious when he said that. He arrested the rogue immediately, brought him to Puri and threw him in jail, where he was guarded by 36 constables and 72 policemen. 32 constables, police officers, and 72 policemen. High security. And he prosecuted him. The trial lasted 18 days. Thousands of people had gathered outside who were under the control of this yogi. And on day 6 of the trial, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's daughter, Kandambini, became ill and died, nearly died. So he knew, Bhaktivinoda Thakur knew that this was the power of the tantric yogi. And he said, let us all die, but this rascal must be punished. So he was so determined. Okay, even if we all die, he must be punished, because he is insulting Lord Jagannath. Like when Prabhupada saw any deficiency, that he saw that Krishna's has been diminished, the desires of Krishna, or Krishna has been sidelined, he would roar like a lion. And I have personal experience of that. He would roar like a lion. He became extremely angry. So he became very angry and put him in jail. And then he went into the jail himself, and he became sick. Bhaktivinoda Thakur became very ill, high fever, exactly like his daughter. But he pronounced this man guilty and sentenced him to 18 months for political conspiracy. Then in jail, he went there and cut off his hair. This yogi had long hair. And because he was convinced that he drew his power from the hair. He cut off his hair, and the yogi lost all power. He had not eaten anything during the whole trial. He fell to the floor like a dead man, had taken to jail by stretcher, and after 3 months he was moved to the central jail in Midnapur, where he took poison and died. He killed himself, an unglorious death. See the power of a pure devotee. He didn't budge 1 inch, even when his life was in danger, like Prabhupada. His life was in danger in so many ways, so many ways, even after he came from the ship, he had another heart attack and was treated in hospital. And then the doctor, Indian doctor, he said to Brahmananda, this old man is praying too much. He should walk every day. And Prabhupada heard this and he laughed when he heard this. This old man is praying too much. But he should walk. So Prabhupada started walking. From that day on, Prabhupada, with determination, every single day he walked. So he risked everything. And then let's go further. Then he was praying to Jagannath, please send a ray of Vishnu to preach the message of Lord Chaitanya all over the world. And in this way, Bimala Prasad was born, who later was known as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So he prayed for this one son. And when Bimala Prasad, Bhaktisiddhanta, was 6 months old, the Jagannath cart stopped right in front of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house in Puri. Couldn't move for 3 days. Nobody knew why. And so then finally, Bhaktivinoda Thakur asked his wife to bring the child on the Rath cart to accept the mercy, get the feet of Lord of Jagannath, and then a huge garland fell from Jagannath around the child. This child was born with his Brahman thread, with his umbilical cord that connects him to his mother, around his neck, and then exactly how we wear a Brahman thread. He was born with a Brahman thread, practically speaking. And he was very determined, his son was very determined. Bhaktivinoda Thakur chastised him that he ate an orange, a mango without offering. The child was only 4 years old. And the child decided with 4 years that he will never eat a mango again in his life. Think about that. His life was pure. I mean, the life of normal people, even devotees, is a mixture of fault and glory. Prabhupada said, fault and glory. It's a mixture of fault and glory. There's some fault there, and there's some glory there. That's normal. Even in devotees, young devotees, normal. There's some fault, there's some glory, and one should never stop practicing to get away from the faults, so that one's life can become completely glorious. So now, when he was later, he retired, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He asked for special permission to retire, and he moved to Surabi Kunj, which is on the other side of the Jalangi River. You know Mayapur, you go to Hugli Ghat. There's a Ganga there. You can go by boat to Navadvip. And if you go straight, you can go to Surabi Kunj. That's where he was. And due to his influence, he could build a railway station all the way from Krishna Nagar in front of his house. It's still used partially, and there's an interest. ISKCON has actually presented a case to extend this railroad, revive it and extend it all the way over the river, over the Jalangi River, right into Sridhar Mayapur. And the Indian government is considering it to revive Bhaktivinoda Thakur's railroad, so that next time when you come to go to Calcutta, Howrah, you can take a train all the way to Mayapur Dam. That's the plan. You just change train and go all the way into the Holy Dam without having a horrific car ride. And so this is all the work of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And last thing I wanted to say that comes to my mind, that his son Lalita Prasad, wrote on the schedule of Bhaktisiddhanta. He would go to bed at 7:30 in the evening and get up at 8. It's half an hour rest. Right? Then then he would rise and write every evening from 10 to 4. Then he would take rest, so he would first engage in his sadhana, then he would write from 10 to 4 in the middle of night. Then he would rise, wash his hands, chant Hare Krishna, 4:30, and write letters and read. 8:30 receive guests. Again he took a quarter of an hour take rest. And then 9:45, morning bath, breakfast of half-quarter milk, couple of chapatis, some fruits, and go 9:55, almost 10 o'clock to court. And 10 o'clock he was in the court, 5 minutes later, 1 o'clock the court was finished, he went home, took bath and refreshed. 2 o'clock he returned to office, 5 o'clock he returned home to translate work from Sanskrit to Bengali. He'd take a bath, meal, couple chapatis, half-quarter of milk, and then from there he consulted his pocket watch and his evening began again. And so it's just amazing, maybe 2 hours rest, no more. And Prabhupada was exactly like that. Prabhupada hardly rested. It's just inconceivable how these people can live like this and how they can do so much because of it, because of their high status, spiritual status, and also their high status of material conduct. And nobody can live like this, writing books, running the court sessions from 10 to 1, and he was judged very quickly. He had no question, there was no doubt, he knew exactly what to do. He wanted to say, okay. And somebody said something, he said, just be quiet, sit down, your sentence, this is your sentence. He would sentence, it was famous in British government how he could sentence so many people in a very just way. Because he was a tool in Krishna's hands. If we are tools in Krishna's hands, we can do everything. And we are tools in the hand of our mind, we become diminished. And ultimately we may achieve a kingdom on earth, but we lose our spiritual life. It's a very expensive way of living. People have no idea, they spend their whole life like the huge, really rich man, richest man in India, and establishes so many things and buys so many things and sells so many things, but ultimately, if he doesn't change in that sense that he would start donating to a worthy cause like Krishna consciousness, what will be his life and what will be his future? I'm not the judge, but this is what happens. You lose everything. You think you're winning. This is material life under the influence of Maya. You think you're winning, but you're losing at every step. That's the situation. And so people are on this road, on the fast road to success, from becoming rich to richer, even richer, even richer, and feel like gods. In the next life they become dogs. Like one time when we were walking in Sweden, there was a dog barking. And Prabhupada said, do you hear this dog barking? I said, yes. And then he said, our Prime Minister, he became a dog in Sweden, which is an amazing career. If you think about it, in one life Prime Minister, in your next life you become a dog in Sweden. This was revealed to Prabhupada by his godbrother Srila Swami, who met one of the biggest astrologers at that time in India. This is way back. We're not talking about one of the recent prime ministers. We're talking about way back. And so what kind of career is that? What kind of career is that? That you be the prime minister, and then next life you be one of these dogs here in the street, stray dogs, you know. So, Hare Krishna. This is all I can say on Bhaktivinoda Thakur and on the principles of how great souls achieve so many things which are impossible to achieve for materialistic people. They may achieve this, may achieve that, but I mean, how do you bring all these people, particularly in Western countries, complete, somebody preaches in the middle of the hippie generation, no meat, no fish, no eggs, no tea, coffee, alcohol, cigarettes, no sex, and people follow that. This is inconceivable for karmis. Like we had this court where this boy was arrested in court in Heidelberg, in the middle. He was arrested in our temple. He was a brahmachari. And police dragged him out of the temple like an animal. So I protested. He said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm the temple president." "Why are you taking this boy?" "Well, what's the reason?" He said, "We cannot talk about the reason because he's not just judged yet. The judgment has to be spoken, but the judge is looking for him. We have to arrest him. The judge wants to see him." So the next day this boy called and said, "My lawyer," government gives him a lawyer, sent him, the lawyer said that I should come to the court to say something positive about him. And so I went to this court. And so the judge said, "Mr. Brinkman," he said, "Mr. Brinkman," he said, "Yes, I'm right here." He said, "I heard you want to talk about this boy to me before judgment." I said, "Yes." And so I said, "Your Majesty, your Honor, the court, as far as I understand, the jail is there to correct people. Understand what he did? He smuggled some piece of hashish, not a big thing. Petty session court, not high court." He said, "Yes, that's true. It's for rectification." I said, "He's already rectified." He said, "How is that?" He said, "Well, we follow very strict principles. No meat, no fish, no eggs, no tea, coffee, alcohol, cigarettes, what to speak of drugs. No gambling. And no sex." "No sex," the judge said. He went up like this. "No sex." I said, "Only in marriage and then for producing children." The judge was in a shock. He said, "That is worse than hell. Take him with you. He's sufficiently punished." Take him with you. Sufficiently punished. And the whole court was applauding. There were hundreds of people there. It's a petty session court who were supposed to be judged during the session of one day. They all clapped. And all glories to the judge. Somebody screamed because he was a good judge. He could understand, he has given up everything. So what's the point of putting him in jail? For what? It's inconceivable to people. And Prabhupada preached that, and people followed him by the droves, leaving everything behind they possibly had at that time. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Oh, one last thing I need to say. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a vision, two visions, but one of the visions was that one day he saw into Mayapur, and he saw many, many foreigners, white-faced foreigners, singing and dancing in kirtan. And he said, when will this day come that Russians, Germans, Americans will join in Harinam, which came true then 100 years later, And another thing, he saw a huge temple rising, which was predicted already by Srila Nityananda Prabhu. By Nityananda Prabhu, that a huge temple will rise in Mayapur, and all that is happening. So, welcome to the club, all of you. are very fortunate, myself also, and somehow or other we could enter into the association of Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas by being in the Hare Krishna movement. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So now you will.